Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to my channel. As you guys can tell from the title of today's video, I have a little bit more of a chatty video for you guys. I actually talked about this in my vlog very briefly, and there was a bit of me actually rearranging my shelves, which kind of plays into the video that I wanted to talk about today. It's not so much, I feel like a lot of people are going to think that this video is about consumerism. A lot of people are going to think that this video is about hype. And while I think it does have a little bit of both of those elements to it, this is more a video about my personal struggle with reading. I have been struggling a lot recently with wanting to participate in a lot of different readathons, with wanting to really cut down on my TBR, my actual physical owned TBR, while also supporting authors that I truly love and being able to support my library, because I am a Friends of the Library. I do think that we have one of the best library systems in the US. And I'm really struggling with trying to figure out kind of what is the best way to go about making sure that I'm reading what I want to read, making sure that I'm getting through what I want to read. And today I thought I would kind of break down each of my thoughts for each of those categories, kind of how I try to cut down on certain things, how I kind of try to curb my spending, how I've been doing that, and kind of how I'm trying to get through my own physical TBR. So starting with what I did on Goodreads, a lot of you guys were pretty aghast about this on Twitter. I actually deleted all of the books on my to be read shelf on Goodreads recently. And there's a few reasons for that. I was going through them, and let me tell you, Goodreads needs to have a better system for getting rid of books, because I couldn't mass delete everything. I had to actually go through and do it one at a time. As well as when you add books to Goodreads, there are multiple different kinds of different versions of the same book that you could be reading. So I had a lot of duplicate books that I've already read, and it was a nightmare. If you're adding things to your Goodreads list, please be careful of what you're adding, because it's just such a pain in the ass later to go back. But I did delete everything. And it is because while perusing my Goodreads shelf of my to be read, I started noticing that there were either books that I'd already read different versions of, so that was incredibly annoying, or there were books on there that I, at this point in my life, have no desire to read, or they were books on there that I at one point or another wanted to read, but I can't remember kind of what it was about. And here's the thing, with Goodreads TBR, with the want to read shelf, I feel like you see a book on Goodreads and you add it, or you're out shopping and you're like, oh, I'll add it to my Goodreads, want to be read shelf for later. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't actually use that. I feel like it's kind of a way to be like, these are the books that I'm semi-interested in. These are the types of books that I'm semi-interested in. But for me personally, as a consumer in the ways that I do consume writing, so whether it be books that I buy, books that I borrow from the library, I never actually go back to my want to read shelf and actively seek out those books. And what I actually use instead of that is my Amazon wish list. I use that as books that I definitely want to get. So if I'm in the market to buy a book, I'll go on Amazon, see what's on there, try to find it at the bookstore local to me, try to find it at a half price books. If I can't find it there, then I will buy it from Amazon. So it's a little bit different for me. I think that shelf, I don't really use it as a way to actually purchase books that I want to read or borrow books from the library. I oftentimes forget that that shelf even exists. So that's going to lead into the second part of this, which is what I want to do with my shelves, what I want to do with all of the books that I own that I haven't read, because I have quite a few. So what I actually wanted to do, or what I will eventually be doing, is adding books to my want to read shelf. I did already kind of start this, that I actually physically own. So the books on my shelves, my want to read list, are the books that I have on my shelves physically, that if I wanted to right now, I could grab them and pick them up and read them. Because I don't know about you guys, I own about 400 books, maybe a little bit less now that I've unhauled a few, and I have about a third of them that I haven't read. It might even be a larger number now. Like looking at my shelves, I feel like there's a lot more on there that I haven't read. And that is what I want to use my Goodreads shelf for. I want to use it for a resource of, this is a book that you already own. This is a book that in no way do you have to spend money on, no way do you have to, seek it out from the library. You don't have to go to the library at all. You can just grab it from your shelves. Because one of the goals that I had for 2019, which I have failed miserably at, is reading books that I already own. And I haven't done that at all. I've read maybe like 3 or 4 books that I owned, like my TBR that I had last month. I had a couple books that I owned on there. I ended up reading primarily library books. And sometimes I think this is okay, at least in the way that it was happening with me. I was at a really weird point in my life. I didn't actually own any of the kinds of books that I wanted to read. I wanted to read like adult romance. I wanted to read a lot of contemporary. I wanted to read really light and fluffy stuff because of the current point in my life that I'm at. Now, obviously, this isn't going to apply to a lot of people if you, A, don't really own a lot of books, like whether you don't want to, you don't have the financial means, totally understandable. But for me, in my current situation with all of the books that I own, I really need to start actually getting through the physical books, because I have always been a pretty high consumer of literature. I've always read, but I primarily didn't start buying books until the last couple of years. I've had smaller collections throughout the years, but even as an avid reader, I can't think of a time in my life where I've owned quite as many books as I do now. Like maybe one bookshelf full, but now I own 4, and I'm in the market for a 5th one. I'm really running out of space. If you can tell, some books are double stacked on the shelves to the right of me that you can't really see. They are completely double stacked. And I just really want to get to the point where if I'm buying a book, it used to be when I bought a book, I would be reading that book. Like I was buying that book to read it. And now it's, I buy this book to let it sit on my shelves for months and months and months, or even years for some of these books. The first step that I did, I actually started this 6 months ago. I started unhauling a lot of books. I started really sitting down and going through my shelves and deciding, am I ever going to read this? Is this ever something that I have an interest in? Or am I just keeping it because it's either a hyped book, or it is a book that I see a lot of people reading, or a book that I'm reading with people, that kind of thing. I was at a point in my life where instead of just borrowing books from the library, I was buying them. And then I got to the point where I wanted to unhaul some books that I just had no interest in reading. And I think there's a place and a time for big book hauls. I think there's a place and a time for big unhauls. But for me personally, I don't want to buy books anymore unless I have the absolute 100% love for them. There are a lot of books that I borrowed from the library recently that I do want to eventually purchase. And this is going to kind of go into the hype portion of this video. I'm so tired. Guys, I'm so tired of buying into the hype. I have read and been disappointed over the years with so many books. And there's a lot of books that I feel like maybe I rated higher because of the hype, and I was like so into it, and just talking to my friends about it, it really made me think that I truly loved that book, when in reality, I just honestly thought the book was just okay. And that's something that I really struggle with. And that's something that I feel like a lot of us really struggle with. It is the desire and the want to own a book, to take a picture of it, to be able to post, to have engagement, to talk to your friends, to talk to other people, because you know there's going to be people talking to you about it. Like for example, when Sarah J. Maas a couple years ago, when the Empire Storms came out, everybody was like, oh my God, you know, we got to read it. When A Court of Frost and Starlight came out, people knew that there was a lot of engagement for those books. So there was going to be a lot of people reading those books, and it was going to bring people to their channels, and it was going to bring people to their Instagrams. And there's nothing wrong with that. You want people to engage with you. And I've realized over the last couple of years that I want people to engage with me for me. And I want people to like what I like because that's what they like, not because, you know, like if I'm talking about some obscure book and I've got 1 or 2 people who are talking about it with me, that brings me a lot more joy now than having one Instagram post be incredibly popular because it's a book that everybody's talking about that I'm sort of lukewarm on. I'm kind of over the hype at this point. There are a lot of authors recently who have really disappointed me with the writings that they have done, with the books that they have published, and I'm kind of over it. Like for prime example, Leigh Bardugo with her new book, I don't really have the desire to read it. I don't really want to read it. I've put it on my Amazon wishlist waiting for more information on it, and we'll see if it like eventually piques my interest, but if it doesn't, I'm just gonna get rid of it. King of Scars, there was a lot of hype around that, and I didn't really care, and I didn't really connect with it. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of times people kind of lose track of the joy of reading in a way, like finding that obscure book or finding a book that really makes you happy and it not mattering if other people really love it. And I think that the way I came about that thought process, the way that that became the standard for me, was growing up in a very primarily poor area in Alaska, and it was very small. A lot of people were very poor. It was very much so like a lot of people didn't really read, and I didn't have a whole lot of people to talk to about the books that I was reading. So reading for me was and has always been a very solitary enjoyment kind of thing. It hasn't been, you know, like what book can I buy to get people to talk to me about? Or like I didn't read Twilight, I didn't read The Hunger Games, I didn't read Divergent, I didn't read, you know, any of those. Even when I moved to the lower 48 and I was living in Ohio, I still, reading for me was primarily a solitary thing. A lot of the time I would go to used bookstores, I would go to the Volunteers of America, I would go to places like that to get the books that I wanted to read, and it didn't matter. And as somebody who currently, well, as of this morning, I got an interview for a second job. So as somebody who's really trying to get their finances in order, I think that for me, looking at the amount of money I have spent on books and the amount of money I've spent on books that have either let me down, have been lackluster, have not lived up to the hype, or I've just genuinely not liked, I'm really sad about that. Like, that's a lot of money. That is a car payment. That is groceries. That's rent. You know, it's a lot of different things. And while I'm never going to get rid of my books, and while I'm never going to stop buying books, I want to be more mindful of actually consuming what I have. And that brings me into the library. Now, I am 1000% the biggest fan of the library. I think the library is an amazing resource. Where I used to live before I moved into this apartment, it was a more poor area, and the library was a great resource for people to use the computers to, you know, if they didn't have cable to like, or internet or anything like that, to kind of entertain themselves so they didn't feel so shut off, to look up job applications, to apply to jobs. They had a lot of different resources like that. But on top of it, for reading, for literature, there was a lot of primarily like Black books there because it was a primarily Black neighborhood. And I thought that was amazing. Like, I feel like the library does so much for so many people. And as somebody who does regularly donate to the library, I think that for me, I value it for more than just a place to get books. And when it comes to my journey with making sure that I'm not spending money, I think that it's a great resource. I think too often when we get on the computer and we're watching our booktube friends, I feel like a lot of people see the booktubers who don't have the big bookshelves behind them, who don't have a lot of books, and they look at them as not real readers. And that's strange to me, because the only thing about being a reader that you need to be is a reader. You don't need to be an owner of books. You could read on Kindle, you can read on audiobook, you know, you can own physical copies, you can own all the paperbacks, you can own all the hardcovers. I feel like I got really turned off about that, and I got really turned off about buying books and wanting to consume books that I really loved and just not caring anymore. If you follow me on Instagram, you will have noticed that I archived a ton of my photos. I think of 500 photos that I had, I archived almost 450 of them, because this has been a long time in the making, but I don't want to say rebrand, but I want to do things in a more cohesive way for me. And I want to talk about books that I really love. And a lot of the books on there, I had thought I liked at one point or thought I loved at one point. And for one reason or another, I don't. And I don't want to have those on my Instagram. My Instagram has 50 posts right now. And I want to talk about things and talk about books that bring me joy and books that I genuinely love. And if other people love them, that's fantastic. If other people don't love them, I don't care. So that is kind of where my mind's been at, from a consumerism sort of like feeling like I'm going to continue to borrow books from the library, because that does still support authors here in the United States. If you're borrowing a book from the library or requesting books from the library for the library to purchase, it does work in the favor of the author of the book. And then for me, if I do love that book, if I know I'm going to read it again, or I know I want somebody in my life to read it, I will then purchase it to have it on my shelves. And I don't want to just buy every single book that I read anymore. I don't want to buy every single book that I borrow from the library just for the simple need of like having to have it on my shelves as like a little trophy, because I feel like a lot of us kind of do that too. Like, reading a book and finishing a book is a trophy. You've spent the time, you've spent the tears, you know what I mean? Like, whether you're sad about it, the anger if you didn't like it. And I feel like a lot of people like to have that book to be like, I have completed that. If you play any kind of video games, there's achievements associated with video games for a lot of different consoles. And it's because people like to see a tangible reward for the things, for the time that they put into things. So I feel like with games, it's achievements, and with reading, it's like owning the physical book. And I don't know, I'm at the point in my life where I don't want to be that person anymore. If I love the book, then absolutely I will own it. I mean, I have an entire shelf dedicated to Harry Potter stuff, an entire shelf, not like one shelf, like an entire 5-tier shelf, because I love Harry Potter that much, and I have all of Stephen King's books. I'm not saying I'm not going to be a consumer anymore, but I would like to be a conscious consumer. And I do want to continue with pre-orders of books from authors that I love, because that's where things get a little bit tough for me, because as somebody who doesn't want to buy books unless I absolutely love them, there are a few authors that I know no matter what they publish, I'm going to buy it. Victoria Schwab, Alex White, Nicholas Eames, Preston Norton. There are so many authors that I can think of that no matter what they publish, I'm going to buy it. And if I love it, I love it. And if I don't, whatever. But there are I don't know, I just think time and places for things like that. And I feel like there's been a lot of discussion recently. There was a tweet that went around that someone said, people don't buy hardcovers. You know, people like to make excuses for not buying hardcovers and saying that it's because they're too clunky, when in reality, it's probably just because they can't afford it. And I think that's the tweet that really turned me off to kind of this whole experience for me, because one, that's very, I don't know, that's like saying like, I've got money and I can buy it, so you can buy it too. Like, you're just poor. And I don't like that mentality. And I want to use my money on things that are important to me. So it's pre-ordering my authors, my favorite authors' books to get the word out. It is donating to my library. I'd rather spend my money on those things than spending my money buying a book that I find mediocre. I know this video probably wasn't very cohesive, but I did want to kind of sit down and talk to you guys about my books going forward and kind of like what I'm going to be talking on my channel. I'm going to try to be doing more book reviews. There are a few books that I really want to talk about, or books that I'm currently reading that I know I'm going to want to talk about. And I wanted to branch out, and I didn't want to limit myself so much anymore. And I've seen a lot of people fizzle out of YouTube recently, and I think it's because they've kind of run into that problem. And I think at the basis of it, you need to remember that reading is a wholly personal experience. Like, that is your experience with reading. That is the most important thing. And I don't know, I didn't want to keep limiting myself to what's popular to get views, or what is being talked about the most to get views. Like last month, it was Priory of the Orange Tree. I have no desire to read Priory of the Orange Tree. And I felt like I was really missing out because of that. Or a lot of people are doing the Owls this month, and I think it's an amazing, amazing readathon, but I just didn't want to participate in it because I am at the point in my life where I want to mood read. It is just, I don't know, it's so suffocating sometimes to feel like you have to read what is the most popular. And I don't even really think that it's like that. I think that we kind of made it that way ourselves. So that's what's even more frustrating. But moving forward, I'm really just going to be focusing on what I want to read, when I want to read it, talking about what I want to talk about, and just reading a bunch of different types of books, like a lot of different diverse books. Like, people have been really going at me with why I've been reading so many contemporaries and how it's just crazy to think about that. And I'm going to do a whole separate video on how contemporary really, in all honesty, probably saved my life. And obviously that's a more recent thing. And if you want to see that video, let me know. I can definitely film it. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this video. It's probably pretty rambly. I really just wanted to sit down and talk to you guys like friends about where I'm at with my reading, where I'm at with my consumerism, what I'm buying, what I'm getting rid of, that kind of thing. Let me know if any of this resonates with you and kind of how you handle the constant urge to want to purchase things, like having the Barnes & Noble membership, getting on Amazon and spending every little last penny that you have. Like, let me know down below how you feel about this stuff. But I love you guys a lot. Thank you for taking the time and sitting down with me. I hope this is a little bit more of a personal video. I hope it feels personal in a way, like you're just hanging out talking to me. But I love you guys a lot. There's going to be another video obviously going up on Friday that's completely different from this one. A little bit more of the usual kind of stuff, just expect that. But I love you guys a lot. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.